In the meantime, though, the latest monthly Financial Review Freshwater Strategy poll has the Coalition's primary vote slipping 2 points on last month. Peter Dutton's approval rating has also fallen below Anthony Albanese's for the first time since May last year. Now, based on this data, Freshwater projects a hung parliament with Labor holding 71 seats, the Coalition 66, and 13 split amongst the Greens and Independents. For more on this and the day's other political stories, I'm joined by Sky News contributor Chris Uhlmann. Chris, great to see you. The polls sort of universally have been going against Dutton for the last couple of weeks. Is this a sign that Labor is clawing back territory?
Look, it may well be, Carla, but I've thought for some time, based on which poll you were reading, that within the margin of error that nothing much had essentially changed since the last election. So maybe we're seeing some signs of that. So if you were Peter Dutton and his troops, you would be concerned. I'd be even more concerned about the result that we saw out of Western Australia, where everyone was predicting that although the Liberal Party would lose, it would do much better. In fact, it barely lifted its head above that extinction level event that we'd seen 4 years previously. And this goes to one of the really big problems that the Coalition has, and particularly the Liberal Party. It is completely dysfunctional in West Australia, South Australia, Victoria, and New South Wales is under administration. Now, if you don't have the troops to put boots on the ground during an election campaign, you are not going to win that campaign. And the numbers game is against Dutton. He's got to come from 57 seats to 76. The Labor Party sits on 78. So you look at that equation, that is a very big gap to bridge. So I have always thought that the most likely outcome of the next election is a minority Labor government, which will be an interesting exercise for everyone.
Indeed, and that's more or less what I've been saying as well. It's not impossible for the Coalition to claw back the 21 seats that it needs in order to form a majority, but it is extremely difficult. It doesn't matter which way you cut it. I think we're going to end up in a minority government of some description. While we're talking about minority, of course, if it was a Labor government, they may potentially be looking to the Greens. But there was another poll out today showing the Greens supposedly in real trouble in Queensland. Now, this is from Advance Australia, which is, of course, a conservative activist mob, so perhaps we take it with a grain of salt. But they're suggesting from this poll that they could lose 2 of their 3 Queensland seats, the Greens, to the Coalition, and the third is on a knife edge. Now, if that were to happen and they didn't pick up any other seats, that would leave Adam Bandt as the sole Greens MP in the lower house. What's the likelihood of that?
Yeah, look, mate, and again, I don't have any problem believing that the Greens, particularly given that they essentially are a party of negativity in the Australian electorate, probably are reaping some of the things that they're sowing, and they've moved a long way from being an environmental party to being activists and basically professional protesters in Parliament. So I can believe that the Greens numbers may well be falling. But even on that Advance poll, you'll see that the Greens numbers have fallen. Labor's have either gone up slightly or stayed pretty much the same. And my experience from many election nights is that unless there's a 4 in front of the Liberal candidate, so over 40%, they usually don't pick up that many preferences, and there's a preference lock between the Greens and the Labor Party. So the other way to read that poll is there's a possibility that the Labor Party could pick up both those seats, and on that election night we won't know the result. We'll have to wait for weeks to find out. So could be good news for the Liberal Party, it might be bad news.
Yeah, and there is other polling showing that Labor will pick up those seats. We'll see what happens when it all comes out in the wash. Now, it's 8 days, of course, now until Treasurer Jim Chalmers hands down a budget. He's preempting what is likely to be a big black hole in government spending. Take a look.
Treasury expects there will be about a $1.2 billion hit to economic output just as a consequence of XTC Alfred. That's about 1/4 percentage point in GDP.
And you've also had a report by Deloitte Access Economics warning of deficits blowing out by $13 billion over the next 4 years, thanks to growing government spending and declining revenues. The forecast in this report is also that net debt will grow by more than $200 billion over the next 4 years to more than $747 billion, or nearly 24% of GDP. But the Treasurer today seemed to be trying to blame it, Chris, on Cyclone Albert.
And the Treasurer, of course, and I've got no doubt there will be some hit to the budget from Cyclone Albert. Let's just say it is $1.2 billion. Let's have a look at what's happened to the figures over the time that Jim Chalmers has been Treasurer. He has enjoyed the biggest budget windfall, that is revenue write-ups, in Australia's history. 2 years to date, $187 billion in the bank that he was not expecting. If you look at the forward projections, $276 billion over 3 years that he was not expecting. expecting that went into his coffers. And what did we get over that time? Well, we saw the size of government rise from 24% of GDP to 27% of GDP, which is a permanent increase in the size of government in Australia, the biggest in the last 50 years. So with the things that Jim Chalmers couldn't control, he got an enormous amount of money. With the things that he could control, he spent an even more enormous amount of money and has locked in permanent budget deficits forever. That's the true story. So lucky Jim has been lucky for him, but unfortunately it's not going to be terribly lucky for governments into the future. And again, unfortunately, I don't see either side of politics being able to rein these deficits in.